Hey, what's happening? Here we are. Uh, so, a couple things we got to talk about today, and then we'll do the lecture. So, we'll get through about half of the Facebook news feed lecture. We'll do the rest on Friday. So, two big things. Number one, the lab sections are all created, so they're there. When whatever time, whatever lab section you're in, you'll find a folder, lab exercises. You can download the file by right-clicking on it, and then you'll have the option Save Link As. And when the time comes to upload it, you can press here on the assignment name, LX1, Lab Exercise 1, Intro to MS Access, and that's where you upload it, in case you haven't seen that before. Okay? So that'll be fine. And again, because of some of the things that went off the rails early this week, this first lab exercise, the due date is Friday for everybody, regardless of what day your lab was, is, will be. The first one is due on Friday, so you have extra time for that. And yeah, and then next week we'll go back to the usual model of the lab exercises due on whatever day you have lab. Okay? Questions on that? All right. So there's that. Second thing, Packback is up. So to do Packback, I got to go into our regular lecture section, and I'll talk about Packback. But here's where you find it. There's a Packback folder. If you click on this link, it will take you to the Packback platform. I've been informed that it now costs $31 instead of the $29 that it used to last semester. So like a lot of things, it went up a bit. Sorry about that. But anyway, I'm sure it's pretty easy to figure out how to pay because the good people at Packback really, really do want to accept your money. So, yeah. Anyway, now once you get into it, I'll show you that a little bit. But before we get into it, I'm going to talk about it. And we are going to give some info about Packback. All right. So number one, Packback, forever after abbreviated PB, is an online platform for student questions and answers. Okay? You write questions and you write answers to other students' questions. Okay? That's the deal. Now, every post, right, question or answer, is evaluated by Packback as to its quality, what they call its curiosity score. Okay, your posts have to score at least 50 on a 0 to 100 scale to get credit. Okay, and getting 50 is not that hard, trust me. All right, I'll do an example in shortly. So people think, well, how do I go about getting credit, right? How do I go about making sure that my questions and answers score well? Well, there are 3 things you can do. First of all, you can write a longer, more thoughtful post. And when I say longer and more thoughtful, I'm not saying, how sometimes you get like a requirement to write a 1,000 word essay, and you're like, oh, fuck, I don't really want to write a whole 1,000 words. So you find ways to pad it, right? You use longer, more verbose expressions just to pad the word count. Everybody should be nodding like, yeah, we've all done that because I know you all have. Okay. So that's the thing. If you do that, Packback's going to catch it, and it's going to say, you know what, this is slop. It may actually make your score go down. So don't do that, but put in more actual meaningful content into your question. I'll give an example of that in a moment. B, you can have your questions especially be open-ended, right? So the whole point of Packback is that it's supposed to stimulate student discussions, right? It'll give you a chance. It's like a big message board where you can talk back and forth about stuff. Some students actually like it. Other students view it as an easy source of points, but whatever. All I'm saying is some students claim to have enjoyed doing this. And anyway, what PackBack wants is for questions to be open-ended, not like factoid type questions. So if you have a question like, what were Facebook's advertising revenues in 2021? You know, that's something that somebody can just look up, drop an answer in, and the discussion is done. That doesn't lead to a good discussion. But a more open-ended question would be, hey, I have heard that Facebook has been having some troubles with its advertising model. What do you think they might do to make it all work better? Or, you know, do you think they're going to be able to pull themselves out of their rut? Or is, you know, TikTok and YouTube going to, you know, move in on the money that Facebook is making, right? That you can have a discussion about, and that kind of question will score higher. Last, include a link, right? For any claims you make in your thing. So if you're going to say, hey, I've heard Facebook's advertising model is in trouble, find an online article that says that. Okay? All right, and then you can, there's a box to include a link for that. All right, so that all makes sense, I hope. We'll talk in a minute then about the scoring angle. Also, if your question or answer doesn't immediately score above 50, you can revise it and get it rescored. Okay, so there's no reason for people to not get all the points for this. It's not that hard to get 50 in the first place, but even if you don't, right, you can polish and try again. Okay, so I'm going to go into PackBack now, and I'm going to give you an example. This is what I do. And then we'll talk about scoring and points and all that in the class. Okay, so I am going to make a post. No questions have been answered yet. I'm going to ask a new question. Ta-da. What am I curious about? And I'm going to say, I have heard that Facebook's metaverse is a slow motion train wreck. Okay, it's boring, the graphics are lame, and nobody really likes it. Not even Mark Zuckerberg. I hope I spelled that right. What do you think it needs to be, you know, to, let's say, achieve its vision? Okay, so that's a reasonable thing. Now the predictive scorings, I don't get instant feedback yet for this. I'm going to find a source. I'm going to Google something, right? So Facebook, metaverse, failure. Okay, empty sad, unpopular flop. All right, I use the same link in the morning one, so hope it doesn't hit some plagiarism thing. All right, boom, there's my link, and we're going to submit it and see what happens. Okay, submit post now. What did I get? I got a 28, right? So there's not a whole lot. I'm going to put in a description, so that's okay. I can revise this, edit, and I can add a description. I can say, this question is about Facebook's metaverse, which doesn't seem to be nearly as popular as was hoped. Okay, so I'm going to resubmit it with a description now and see if that helps. Bum, bum, bum. Ooh, 57. Okay, so the description thing is an important part of it, but I'm just saying this is not that hard to get a 50. Okay, that's the takeaway from this. So it could be fun, could be interesting. Now, as far as question topics, topics should be whichever firm we are in the module of. Okay, so this week and next week, Facebook, then Amazon, weeks 5 through 8, and so on. Okay, and your questions don't have to be specifically about information technology, right? I know that we get a whole mix of all business majors, you know, finance, accounting, marketing, maybe business management, I don't know, whatever. You are free to post questions on any topic related to Facebook, right? So if marketing is your thing, great, talk about that. If finance is your thing, talk about that. Okay, cool. Okay, Now, last bit, points. Every week, first, let's start off this. The total points you can get over the semester is 130. But the Blackboard entry will only show a total of 100 points. That means you can get 30 points of extra credit. Okay, so that's something you can get. So total your points up at the end of the year or at the end of the semester, and whatever you get is whatever you get. Now, each week, ending at 11:59 p.m. Chicago time on Friday, you can earn up to 15 points. Okay, so you get 15 points a week, and the rate is 5 points per question, 2.5 points per answer. Okay, now here's the important detail of this. Packback will tell you that you can earn up to 20 points per week because it allows you to post up to 2 questions and up to 4 answers, right? But I manually impose the 15-point weekly cap. Okay, so when I go through and I total up the points, if you have more than 15 per week, well, sorry, the 15 is the cap. Okay, you are certainly welcome to participate more should you choose to do so, but 15 points is the cap. Reason is I want to keep a consistent level of activity throughout the semester. I know there's some students who'll jump into it and be busy right off the bat and be done with their all this stuff like halfway through the course. And I know that there are other students that wait until the very end to get it done, right? But what I don't want is for people to, there to be like some kind of dead zone in the middle of everything where, because people are doing 20 points per week and a lot of people, you see what I'm saying, okay? I just want there to be like a continuous reasonable amount of activity throughout the semester. That's why I do 15 points. Okay, so last thing, I have about 300 students in my IDS 200 sections. And because of that, and all this stuff is, I'll say, Packback gives me the totals. I don't have to dig through them. I don't have to dig through the posts or, scores, whatever. Okay, I don't have to do that. It's all delivered to me in a big report. Now, if you miss a deadline, sorry, you missed a deadline. Okay, so don't be one of the students who says, hey, I waited until the last minute to do this stuff and I started typing in my question at 11:55 p.m., but I didn't get it done in time. Can you count this for the prior week instead of for this week? And I'm going to say, no, sorry, I'm not going to dig through shit to, lift you out of your self-imposed problem. Okay, you miss a deadline, that's okay. There's a lot of slack built into the system. If we have 130 points max, I'm going to point out 9 times 15 is 135, meaning you only need to participate in 9 weeks to max out your points, right? You don't have to do it every week. You can miss a week here and there. You take a week off, whatever. You got busy with other stuff, fine. You have that scheduling flexibility, right? But if you drag your heels and wait a long time to get it done, then, you might run out of time. So it's better to start earlier than later, but you don't have to do it every week. Okay, and that's the other reason why I can, I'm totally fine with myself with being strict about this deadline. Okay, because you get a lot of second chances. Second thing, what was it? Oh yeah. Also, again, with this cap, right? With this cap, don't be one of the people who sends me the sad email around the end of the semester and says, "Oh man, I thought we could get 20 points a week. Packback says I've been getting 20 points a week. What do you mean there's this 15-point cap? Can't you just count the?" And I'll say no. This was all clearly explained in class and in the Packback instructions and intermittently announced through Blackboard. So if you missed all that shit, I don't know, you're pretty checked out. Okay? All right. Any questions on Packback then? Yeah. Go ahead. What answers, is there like a scoring system for answers as well? Yeah, it's similar. I wasn't going to answer my own question though. Yeah. Yeah. What? Yeah. You can start this week. Yep. Yep. So again, you have from week 3 to week, it closes out week 15, closes out the week before finals, and you can even do it during spring break. So you have a total of 14 weeks that you can do it. So you only have to do it 9 weeks out of 14, right? There's a lot of slack. Yeah.
So what if instead of taking our time formulating questions to get the larger points, we take time and just answer as many questions as possible? Are we still going to be allowed to
Yeah.
get those 2.5 points per answer?
Yeah. So the max number of answers you can get credit for in a week is 4. Okay. And I can't override that. That's built into the reports I get. Same thing for questions. The most questions you can get credit for in a week is 2. All right. But if you just want to do answers, if you just feel like, being the answer guy, there's still enough time to do that, right? Because you get 10 points per week just doing answers, and there's 14 weeks that you can participate. Ta-da, right? Yeah. So again, you can play pack-back however you want to play. There are lots of roads to get to that 130 points. Okay? Lots of different paths. Cool. Anything else? All right, then I got a lecture to do, so let's get that done. Okay, here we go. So we'll talk about Facebook newsfeed, and we'll cover basically this first part about the feed itself and extracting revenues, how the model works, all that. All right. So in case you've never used Facebook, I'm sure there's a few people here that probably never have. It has a feature called newsfeed, or more commonly called the feed. And what the feed is basically a content stream of posts, mostly from your friends. You may see some stuff from friends of your friends, and ads. Facebook has ads, notifications they want to give you. Other sources also run ads as well, so that Facebook can make money. Now, key questions about the feed. Number 1, what determines the sequence, right? What determines what you see first, what you see last, and what you don't at all? And number 2, why does Facebook take this approach? And number 3, how is the content managed and delivered? So we'll talk about all this stuff. Now, originally, Facebook worked in directory mode, like MySpace. So if anybody here has ever done MySpace, there's probably a few people that have. I used to have a MySpace account. If you wanted to see what people had on their profiles, what they've been up to, you actually had to go to their profile page and look it up, right? So there was no feed. And yeah, Facebook circa 2005, when it was still called the Facebook, again, worked that same way. Newsfeed launched in 2006. At that time, Facebook didn't have nearly as much activity as it had now. First of all, fewer total users, right? Vastly fewer total users. And number 2, less friend activity per user, right? People weren't that active on it. The people, if you had friends, you probably didn't have many friends on Facebook. You get the idea. So at that point, 2006, it was actually viable to show every user the complete chronological set of recent activity from all their friends, right? The technology could deliver that content reasonably quickly. But scalability problems, right? As Facebook gets bigger, users have more friends, and those friends are becoming more active on Facebook, doing more stuff. Facebook needs to prioritize. Facebook says, gosh, we don't have the bandwidth to show everything to everybody. We're going to try to show stuff that makes people happiest, right? We're going to try to show them stuff from their best friends, and we're going to try to pick the most interesting ads. And on top of that, we have to try to figure out what's a reasonable ad to post ratio, right? Because Facebook doesn't want to pack the feed full of ads because customers will go away, right? They may not go to other social media as much, but they'll definitely spend less time on Facebook if it's wall-to-wall ads. So, borrowing from Google's PageRank formula, Facebook developed a multi-factor formula to rank posts, right? And it used these 3 things: affinity, weight, and time decay. Talk about it on the next slide. All right. If you're interested in this in detail, there's a couple links you can go learn some more. But remember, this is Facebook's 2006 model, where they basically said, do you guys ever watch that movie, The Social Network? Early on where they're talking about chess ratings, remember, and they use that to like rank the prettiness of girls relative to each other. Use that it's an exponential model. Anyway, this is that same kind of thing, right? You round up a few smart people, put them in a garage for an hour and say, yeah, come up with some model of how we're going to have a baseline for this, how this works. Something that makes sense. Then they're going to implement it, and they're going to learn how well it works and try to improve it going forward. but this is a good model to use when you don't have a lot of data to work with about the users. Okay, so that's where this model is coming from. The first factor is affinity. So affinity is the one-way connection strength. Basically, how interested you are in the source of the post. So one thing they look at for that is mutual friends, because if you and the person have a lot of mutual friends, you're probably part of the same tight circle of buddies, and you're interested in what all of you all are doing. The other thing is interaction frequency, how frequently you interact with their posts. So suppose, hypothetically, you're friends with somebody famous, and that somebody famous is actually like a good buddy of yours. You talk with them regularly on Facebook. So they have a lot of friends. Because they're famous, they're going to get like wall-to-wall friend requests. But you are that rare one that they actually have a fair amount of interaction frequency with, right? So you would have a high affinity with that person. Famous person would have a high affinity with you. But all those other people that are, just fans, not really friends, the famous person is going to have a low affinity with any of those fans. Does that make sense? Okay. Second thing is weight. So weight is the significance of actions and content. And this is, again, just a baseline. Some of it is assumptions about what people like to see, others assumptions about how people act. So one of the things Facebook looked at initially was how much trouble you went to interact with someone. So if you just click like on a post, or you click the sad face on a post, which they didn't have in 2006, but whatever. If you click the like on a post, then that's a pretty low level of effort, right? It's like, somebody posts a picture of their kid's birthday, and, it's not like you really think it's a great picture, but you don't want to be rude and not like, so yeah, you can press like. But if one of your friends has like some major life event happen and you're actually super excited for them, you'll probably type in some comment, say, wow, that's great, such good news, super, right? You went to more trouble. Going to more trouble, like putting a comment in like that, takes more work than just clicking, so it carries more weight. And Facebook says, you're interested, this post, this user, whatever. Also, as a baseline, pictures are assumed to have more weight than comments. That just means Facebook knows people like to see pictures. Because people like to see pictures, Facebook, all else equal, is going to preferentially show you pictures when they come up. Okay. Last one, time decay. So time decay is a way of filtering out older content. Because if you don't do that, you could end up seeing the same recycled posts over and over and over, and you don't want to see that, right? It's like Facebook shows it to you once, maybe a couple times. If you're not interested, then fine. Eventually, it ages out of getting seen. So all else equal, the rank of these different posts continually declines, right? They get older, they get less relevant, they're yesterday's news. But what also is interesting, for a time decay can be outweighed by user interactions, which means this something you've probably seen in Facebook. So suppose you post some really epic thing on Facebook, and it's one of those ones where you're going to get a couple hundred likes, okay? So the first day, your inner circle of people all hit like on it, and it gets like 50 or 100 likes, and that's great. Next day, what happens? Facebook does some kind of batch update of the status of that post, and it releases it to a broader circle of your friends, right? And maybe 3 or 4 days later, as it's winding down, it goes to like some of your really peripheral friends, and they like it, and then you're like, oh wow, yeah, that's I haven't heard from you in months. Gosh, I wonder what you're doing. Thanks for liking my post, right? And the thing is, because Facebook does this kind of slow trickle out of the post, it doesn't automatically show it to everybody. Facebook does have other things too, like a top 50 friends. Last I checked, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, but anyway, affinity is this kind of one-way connection strength, right? It's not necessarily symmetrical. Weight is how important the action is, and time decay makes the older stuff go away. So posts where you have very interested in the source, and you've shown that you're interested by the kind of comments and activity you make, or Facebook's assumption of your baseline preferences, and then something that's newer, that's the sort of stuff you're going to see first in your feed, because Facebook is going to assume that that's what you're most interested in. Okay? All right. Now, of course, Facebook has been continuously gathering data for close to 20 years after Newsfeed was implemented. So they have a lot of data, and they can come up with much more accurate predictions of user behavior, right? So I'll give you an example of myself. So suppose that once in a while on the way to work, I stop off and get a donut, because I live pretty close to a Dunkin' Donuts and I could do that. But what's going to, and maybe this is like a 20% probability on any given day, I'll stop into Dunkin' Donuts and get a donut. So that's kind of like what Facebook's guessing was early on. They say, well, yeah, historically we know that he has about this probability of wanting to see this stuff. That's our best guess. But as Facebook learns more about me, right, they can come up with better predictions. So for example, suppose I only get a donut if I'm on my way to work in the morning. So it would mean if I only have an afternoon lecture someday and I wake up at noon and I waddle down to the train station a little later, I'm probably not going to get a noon donut. That's not really a thing. Likewise, if I'm not working at all, I'm probably sleeping till noon and not getting out of the house until I got to walk the dog. So same kind of thing, right? I'm probably not going to stop off for a donut. So if Facebook kind of knew my schedule for a semester and they could figure out what days I'm working, what days I'm not, and when I'm working, they would have a much better guess of figuring out whether I'm going to get a donut. Might be other factors like weather. Maybe if the weather is nice, like if it's a really warm day, I say, oh, I don't want a donut on a really warm day. It's, frosting's going to melt all over my hand. It'll be gross. Same thing if it's raining. I was like, oh, I don't want to eat a donut in the rain. Who does that? I'll be walking under a building and stuff's going to drip on it and I'm going to eat it. But if it's a nice day and not too hot, maybe that's like the sweet spot for me to buy donuts. Okay? So this is what I'm saying when I say, typically, only a few variables by themselves are strong predictors, but there's a lot of other little things that add up to let Facebook get a better idea of what people want to see. And at this point, Facebook uses literally hundreds of those kind of factors to come up with really amazingly good predictions of whether you're interested in stuff or not. Okay? Okay. Cool. Now, as far as revenue, Facebook makes the vast majority of its money from ads. So one model is the per click, where if somebody clicks on the ad, Facebook gets paid. The other model is per impression. Per impression, Facebook gets paid just because somebody sees the ad, right? So for every pair of eyeballs that see the ad, Facebook makes a little money. The tiny sliver of other money comes from things like Facebook fees on transactions. If you buy something, for example, if you get the silver membership on chess.com, which I think costs like $50, then I'm sure Facebook gets a cut of that. Okay. There are also indirect. So these are direct sources. This is where the actual money comes from. But indirect sources are multipliers, right? When Facebook has these things, they make more money. So if there are more users, then obviously Facebook can show more ads to those more users and multiply how much money it makes. Likewise, if users are spending more time on the site, Facebook has more opportunity to show them ads and can make more money. And if the users have higher engagement, that means in some sense they're interacting more with Facebook content and ads. Simple one, if they're clicking on ads more, right? If Facebook does a better job of showing ads that are interesting, again, Facebook makes more money. All right. So yeah, better accuracy leads to revenues. First of all, user experience. If Facebook has a really good idea of what works to give people a better user experience and keep them around, keep them coming back for more, they're going to spend more time using. So you'll see more stuff that you want to see and fewer posts from peripheral friends, right? Because we all have those people on Facebook that we know them and they send us a friend request and we're like, yeah, okay. But as we got to know them, we realized that they were kind of weird and we would be kind of happy not hearing too much from them. But we didn't want to unfriend them because that's kind of rude, right? They haven't really done anything that bad. It's just, yeah, they're kind of annoying and I don't really want to see them every day. So that kind of thing is what Facebook is trying to prioritize. If it's pay-per impression advertising, then of course, more people spending more time on the site, it means more eyeballs seeing ads, Facebook makes more money. If it's pay-per-click advertising, then again, more people seeing more ads. If even the probability of seeing the same ads is flat, they just have more opportunity to see more ads, and on average, the number of clicks will go up. Okay. So that's why they want to do it. That's why they want to deliver content in a particular sequence. Now, the basic problem for Facebook is to control the sequence and the mix of the feed content. So first of all, as far as sequence, we've talked about that, but the second is the mix. How do you mix this all up? So you got to have some of your friends post, so that's going to be the dominant thing, but Facebook also has to mix in some ads in there, right? It doesn't want to mix in too many, but it's got to mix in some. And the other thing, text versus images versus video. So for example, if Facebook knows that people like to see images, yeah, it's going to, throw in a lot of images. Video is a difficult one. Some people really like watching videos that people post. Other people almost always skip over them. But it takes a lot of bandwidth to send those video segments out, right? So Facebook only wants to send you video segments if you've shown that you're the kind of person who's interested in them. And text, some of that's going to happen too. Okay. So primary objective for Facebook: provide customized, interesting content, right? Because everybody has their different idea of what they want to see, and Facebook has to customize that for each user. They also want to maintain and encourage user involvement, right? So Facebook is going to look and see, oh, we changed our model a little bit. How does that mean, in terms of user involvement? Are people spending more time or less or about the same? Are they clicking on more things or less or the same? Same thing for ads. The ads we're showing, are we doing a better or worse job of getting clicks on those ads? And they want to maximize sustainable ad revenue. So for sure, Facebook could do something like have 90% of the feed content be pay per impression ads, right? And for that first couple of days, they'd probably make a lot more money than usual. But if their feed is 90% ads, people are going to stop spending much time on Facebook, right? They're going to go somewhere else like YouTube or TikTok or outside something, right? They're going to stop spending as much. So that ad revenue wouldn't be sustainable. So Facebook wants to figure out that sweet spot where they're maximizing the ad revenue but maintaining user involvement as well. All right. Now, interesting thing. So this was one of the areas where Netflix was a pioneer back in the day. So with preferences, there's two ways to learn what people think is interesting. One is called stated preferences. You just ask people what they'd like to see, and then they tell you. And hopefully they're telling the truth, and hopefully they know what their preferences actually are. The other one is revealed preferences. Revealed preferences are a way of just watch what they do, and whatever they do is what they like. Yeah? So, problem is, this is something that Netflix knew early on. A lot of people are going to elevate their preferences in some sort of phony status-seeking gesture, right? So if Netflix asks people, what kind of movies would you like to see? A whole lot of people are going to say stuff like, well, I prefer thoughtful Oscar-winning, dramas and documentaries and that sort of thing. When in reality, a lot of people really like movies with car crashes and TNA, right? That's life. So a lot of people are going to try to say that there's something they're not, to have some idealized version of themselves. That's one problem. The other problem is that it's really hard in detail to track what people's preferences are, right? You can ask, do you like Pepsi or Coke? And that's a pretty easy one. But if you have a list of 10,000 different subjects and you try to say, well, show me which ones you like even something simple like baseball, you could say, well, do you like baseball or not baseball? Not, well, you could break it down, right? There's National League, there's American League, there's leagues in other countries. Within each of the leagues over here, there are, different teams, and you could be interested in one particular team. So, for example, with myself, well, I'll talk about it in a minute. Anyway, what Facebook wants to do is just observe what people do and adjust the preferences based on what people actually interact with. Problem is, it requires a lot of data to do that, right? You have to be continually grinding out some numbers in order to figure out what people actually like to see. So overall, though, the basic rule: provide content that's similar to past interactions, right? If it's a user whose post you've previously commented on, you'll see more stuff from that user. If you frequently click and watch some of the videos that Facebook gives you, you're going to see more videos. And Facebook also has some baseline profile dimensions. There's a way you can dig in there and see what Facebook thinks, your big category preferences are too. All right. Now, as far as freshness, of course, more recent data should be emphasized because it's going to be more likely to be what your current state is. Something simple: think about what music you used to like to listen to 10 years ago. There's a pretty good chance that it's a lot different from what you like to listen to now, right? Unless you're like my age and your tastes are pretty stable once you hit that. But, there's a big difference between about 10 and about 20 in terms of that music. Problem is, if you shorten that window too much, though, you're going to get what are called sample errors. Because why? Because you have a short window of data and a very small pile of data, and weird fluky events can really throw off what Facebook thinks your perspective is. For example, you let your little brother borrow your phone for a day, and he's super interested in anime, so he goes onto Facebook and he starts searching like all the anime stuff he can find on Facebook. And then for like the next 2 or 3 days, Facebook thinks like you're the world's biggest anime fan and your feed is like packed with that stuff, right? And I'm going to assume you're not, but my son is going through an anime phase right now. So that's, yeah. Anyway, but the other thing, it'd be a lot of work to update the profile for every single interaction that happens and remodify it. So Facebook doesn't really do that. They do some batch ads. Basically, they track your activity over the course of the day, and at the end, they update your profile so that the next time you log into Facebook, they can show you your feed in, adjusted for your newly learned preferences. All right. Okay. Now, what we've talked about, all this stuff so far, the big picture about tracking what you do and preferences, that's like guidelines and goals and stuff. But still, there's a lot of policy decisions that Facebook has to make, right? Things like even number 2 here, even though we've said that older posts are going to age out, how quickly should they age out, right? Should it be should a week ago post, have like half the value of a today's post, or should it have like 10% of the value? How is that going to work? Other stuff. Can Facebook let advertisers pay for higher visibility? Hint, yes, of course they will, right? But that's a thing. They have to figure out, some sort of appropriate payment mechanism and how much they're going to charge and how they balance out all the different advertisers wanting to have their ads displayed better and more often. Identifying other similar users for extrapolation. So suppose Facebook doesn't have a whole lot of data about you for some purpose that they're looking for. Well, what they might do to make a better decision is find a bunch of users who, in a lot of ways, have acted similarly to how you do. And they could extrapolate from that set of users, or maybe they have a bunch of data for what they want to look, and they say, oh, well, you are like these other users in these 10 ways. We think you're probably going to be like them in this 11th way as well. All right, stuff like that. Again, reactions versus likes, a simple question of how much of that weight is going to be there, right? Is when Facebook a few years back, they implemented, the love and the happy face and the sad face and all that other stuff. How different are those going to be? A little different from a like, not different at all, or very different in terms of weight, right? And should those individual emoticons be different from each other as well? All right. So stuff like that, Facebook still has to work out how they're going to do. Now, again, the most direct method for matching feed content to preferences is getting user-provided specifications. So, example for this, way back in the 90s, mid-90s, one of the things that internet users were excited about was the idea that you could have a customized newspaper delivered to you, your email every morning. So the idea was there'd be some long list of topics, you'd click some check boxes on things you wanted to hear about, and they would, pull those articles from whatever the current news was and deliver them to you. Problem is, that sort of system, it sounds easy, but it really is not going to work that well. Number one, you can't really dig into detailed aspects of topics. Number two, your interest in different things could change over time. The list itself could be very long. It might be that, okay, normally I'm more interested in business news than sports, but wow, the Cubs are in the World Series this year. I'm very interested in that aspect of sports. So just this simple list, yeah, it's not great. It's not terrible, but it doesn't work nearly as well as people hoped. Similar example, I had a cousin, much younger than me, who for a little while was trying to go pro with the Toronto Blue Jays. So he made it, I'm sure he made it up to AA. He may have briefly been in AAA, for a few games, but he dropped out of the thing. He was like, it's probably not going to happen at this point. But had he ever gotten up to play for the Toronto Blue Jays? So I'm not really a baseball fan. I don't hate baseball. I don't tell people to turn off the TV or anything if it's on. But really, the only time I'm going to watch is if the Cubs are in the playoffs. If the Cubs are in the playoffs, I'll watch. Otherwise, I kind of don't care. Anyway, but had my cousin made it to the Toronto Blue Jays, for sure I would have watched a bunch of games with that, right? Because, yeah, you got to. That'd be awesome. Anyway, so this is the kind of thing where, yeah, I have an interest. There's a topic that I'm a little bit interested in, but there's a small segment of that topic that I'm super interested in. And again, that's really difficult to capture with these sort of lists. And last thing, it's even hard to tag the posts properly, right? Because the question is, what threshold of content needs to be in an article or something for it to be tagged in a certain way? I mean, there are definitely some articles that could be, this is about, a particular person, or this is about sports. But at a certain point, these lines kind of get blurred, especially when you start really digging into topics. All right, so again, this revealed preferences is the way to go if you can figure out the data issues to do it. All right, other stuff, presentation issues. Now, short version of this, the same kind of presentation is not going to probably work well on a mobile device versus a desktop. First of all, desktops, again, vastly larger screen sizes, so more real estate to show ads. They tend to have a landscape orientation as opposed to a portrait orientation for mobile devices. And a lot of things like easier user input, right? It's easier to get to things, to navigate around, stuff like that. So same application structure is not going to be great on mobile and desktops, and Facebook is no exception, right? If you've used it on both, then you'll know what I mean. So one tool for doing this is something called auto sizing for dealing with different kinds of hardware. So all kinds of devices have different screen sizes. So I'm going to mention a thing here, right? This is, yeah, you can't see this. I got to do this. By the way, if I ever try to show you something and you can't see the screen because I've forgotten that I need to pop out of the screen, just yell out screen, okay? It'd be like, the dog saying squirrel, the same kind, and I'll know what you mean. So, all right. Anyway, this is the difference between a responsive and adaptive design. So because devices have different screen sizes, one of the things you want to make sure that happens is that, your window is properly fitted to it. Now, the more modern way to do it is what's called a responsive container. And a responsive container automatically resizes when the window size change. An adaptive container, like this one is supposed to be, will only snap into place at certain sizes, right? So if you look at the text here, it says, this container is 800 pixels wide when the browser is any width over 500. Any below that, the container shrinks to 300 pixels. Now, remember what I said, responsive is the more modern way to do it, right? Once upon a time, everybody did adaptive. Now pretty much everybody did responsive. Well, what they did on this page, they actually just made them both adaptive. When this page first appeared, like several years ago, one was adaptive, one was responsive. But the web guys, they just went through and said, oh, here's an adaptive container. We're going to change it to responsive. They didn't look at the page. But the funny thing is, the ad up here, the ads are all adaptive, right? So when I shrink the width of it, eventually, bloop, the ads disappear. How about that? Okay? Then they pop into place when I get big enough, but bloop, disappear. All right. So anyway, that's a real thing. So, but because devices have different screen dimensions, yeah, one of the things they got to do is that kind of adaptive resizing. Okay. Now, again, because of mobile devices have small screens, the ads are going to materially interfere with how people use the device, right? So just like on YouTube, that thing will pop, that ad will fill up the whole window. Of course, that happens even if you're on a desktop, but still, same kind of thing. So because mobile devices have small screens, they can display fewer ads. But the interesting thing is because they're like right there and occupying the whole screen, they tend to get higher engagement. They get higher engagement because people can't help but look at them. Whereas if you're using a desktop, the application is pretty much going to be designed so that, yeah, the ads are sprinkled around the edges and they're fairly easy to ignore, and people just get into the habit of ignoring them. So anyway, different stuff, right? Not saying that one is definitively better or worse, but mobile ads, work differently. So again, this is just a case of one of the things, what works on one kind of hardware is not going to work on another. Last thing we're going to talk about today is clickbait, okay? Because again, this is in the context of feed. Facebook wants to show people, things that they're interested in. Clickbait tends to be one of the things that people think they're interested in, but then find out they're not. So the distinction between clickbait, so everybody out there is trying to get you to their website, right? They're trying to sell you something, or they're hoping you click on ads, whatever. They're trying to get you to look at their page, and they're providing links to do it. The difference between that kind of action and clickbait is generally after clickbait, you kind of feel like you've been tricked, right? You're like, oh man, this sounded way more interesting. It's just nothing. So typical model, there's some kind of enticing headline or link. Often you have to go through a bunch of different screens to reach any content, and often somewhat misleading or non-news, or often just junky at best. So typical example of clickbait, 12 signs your girlfriend is about to leave you. You won't believe number 8, right? And you go through it, and the first one is, she's out all night and doesn't pick up her phone when she's out. Number 2, you catch her making out with other guys, stuff like that. It's like, oh, thanks, clickbait, you got me. So, question is, how does clickbait make money? Well, the short version, same as any other online ad, right? Online ads want to get you to their site to pay for products. So buying products is one. Sometimes clickbait sites will partner up with other sites. So you'll see something like there'll be a clickbait for 100 destinations to visit while you're, before you turn 30. And then if you go to any of those pages, there'll be lots of ads for like Travelocity and Orbitz and hotels and stuff. And if you get through all that, then it'll say, oh, I see that, you've scrolled through all this. Maybe you'd be interested in this other site, 100 restaurants to eat at, before you turn 30, stuff like that. Okay? All right. That's all I got. It's been a hoot. I'll see you on Friday. Yeah. Thank you.